Dialogue is absolutely crucial. Speaking to people, breaking out of communities, just speaking to themselves, although that's really important to do, also to reach out and speak. And I do hear things around Conforti about Ormond speaking to Catholics, and that to me is a good thing, because what we actually share in society is far outweighs what differs. We need to do some policy things, which I hope that the work that Margaret and I are doing on the group are working towards this, to mainstream religion, faith and belief as an equality.
The question is rooted in history, and I think we need to be very cautious about using the word Protestant. And Geraldine and I have got good colleagues within the Faith and Community Scotland network, who I'm sure are known to you, who consciously don't use the word Protestant, talking about the Reformed tradition, because it is such a loaded term, particularly in Scotland. But I'd like to reclaim it and say, do you know, we're all protesting, but for the right things, the gospel message of justice and peace.
It depends who you ask what the value is. And what it strikes me is I've met lots of people that I would have called Protestants because they were ministers in the Church of Scotland who don't like the term. They push the term away.
If there's any way any of us here and any of those we know in our churches or our communities can get involved in local churches together, groups, that's where institutional change will really happen. It's by a mass movement of people on the ground saying enough. And that's what will influence the church leaders at regional and national level. So it has to work in both ways. We can work with the church leaders at a national level, but we also need to support the really good ecumenical work that's happening locally.
There isn't really such an awareness of the subtleties, the kind of, there's an awareness of the kind of foghorn headline stuff that the media latches onto. There isn't an awareness of the subtleties.
And I think where awareness needs to be raised is not so much the level of sectarianism, but the way that it impacts particular people, particular communities, particular places at particular times.
He refused his work and called us lazy, starved us and called us thieves. That's massive about that, from an Irish Catholic point of view. That's why the Irish Catholic, in my opinion, suffered from such abject poverty. It was foisted upon them. And so he became ghettoised in their mind and physically.
And I suppose what strikes me there is, and it comes from what we saw in Northern Ireland, where people begin to feel more vulnerable, and I think the Protestant working class in Northern Ireland is feeling much more vulnerable now. They don't have the same representation as they did have, and then these kind of things become more and more entrenched, and that's all related to the unemployment, economic difficulties of poverty.
I think whatever kind of society I picture Scotland being, it is not one that we ban things that we don't like. So I'm actually really quite worried about the idea that if we banned parades, a relatively small number of Republican parades and a relatively large number of Orange and Loyalist parades, that in some way that would address sectarianism. I actually think it might be quite counterproductive. I think a touchstone of our society needs to be freedom of assembly, freedom of belief, freedom of expression. We can't ban what we don't like.
I think the Orange Order, not just the walks, but I think it's a real part of people's identity, and the challenge is to encourage other forms of identity as well, and not just things that are expressed negatively within that. And also looking at how to reduce or to mitigate the worst effects of walks when they happen.
We should have done something. From a personal point of view, I've approached them numerous times to see if they wanted to back the play, right? I get some money out of it now, so I even put it on in Parkhead. I want to put it on, in Parkhead, not just in a wee room, but put it on and say we're backing this play. Or Rangers are Davis Moore, they was free strips and all that. They've done some stuff for us. The Celtic just blanked us, And it's because they don't want, it's not me personally, they will not speak about bigotry. They're not even engaging in a conversation about it because they don't want drawn in to the truth. That's what I think.
Those two clubs have a primary responsibility within football to do them. How do we get them to the table? I'm not sure we can get them to the table, because I think it's not just yourself, Des, who's being blanked by that. But I would say that these clubs and football in general get an awful lot of public funding. You might be surprised about how much public money goes into what is a mass commercial spectator sport. And I think maybe we need to ask questions about what kind of corporate responsibility we should expect from any company, any commercial organisation that is getting public funds and the way that they address issues around equalities, for example, sectarianism. I think
the experience of sectarianism differs very much depending on what age you are, depending on where you live in the country, depending on your class, depending on your profession and what you do for a living, your place for work. On the whole, I think the message from young people was really positive. I think the increased number of mixed marriages has made a really big difference, getting to know the other. And it's mainly for that reason that I would say, yes, Scotland can move beyond sectarianism, because of this input that we heard from young people.